When too much of an incline in your mounting system can be a bad thing. Coming up. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and today I want to talk about a little bit of a screw up that I did, and I want to make sure I point this out so that you guys don't run into the same situation. Now today I put together our system here and mounted up the SIG BDX. This is actually a Sierra 3 BDX 6.5 to 20 by 52 millimeter rifle scope. This is SIG's new ballistic system. It corresponds with the Kilo 2400 BDX that I have here, and integrates with a smartphone app so that you can actually program your ballistics into the scope and have the laser rangefinder and the scope talk to each other, and it will illuminate a pip in the reticle to tell you what your holdover is for whatever the laser rangefinder has just lased. So it's a really cool idea overall. I wanted to get the system out and kick it around and see what we thought about it. It's really more of a hunting oriented system than a precision rifle thing, but it's a really cool idea overall, and I can definitely see some promise for it later on in the tactical long-range shooting thing if SIG decides to go that route with it. So the rifle that I have sitting in front of me is kind of a parts mutt project that we wanted to throw together. It has an Ultimatum U300 receiver, and we sent this down to Accurate Ordnance, and they barreled it up with a 17-inch 308 barrel, and we threw a Hellfire comp on here, and it is in the Modular Driven Technologies ESS chassis. So we got the scope mounted up on the U300 receiver. I got everything ready to go, went out to the range today, and the first task with a ballistic system like this is just to get a solid 100-yard zero. So I sat down, threw a target out at about 20 yards because with this cheek piece, it's almost impossible to bore sight it. And I just tossed 3 rounds into the target it was actually 30 yards. I tossed 3 rounds into the target at 30 yards and looked at what my adjustment was going to be. Well, I needed to adjust about 8 inches at 30 yards. So if we do the math, that's about 26 inches at 100 yards that we would have been off. So I needed to come down 26 inches at 100 yards. Well, that causes a little bit of a problem because this is a hunting-oriented scope, not a long-range oriented scope. So it is not designed to dial for your elevation for that long of a distance. So I started to turn the turret, and I got to about 22.75 minutes of angle and bottomed out. So that was the end of the adjustment on the turret, and that would not have got me a 100-yard zero. So I thought this was kind of odd. I stepped back and thought about it. I knew going into it that we had a limited amount of adjustment on the Sierra 3. That's not odd at all, but I was wondering why I needed that much down on this setup. So this is the first time out with this rig. So there are all kinds of other things that it could have been, but I stood back and I looked at it for a minute, and I couldn't remember which mount I used. I knew that I had 2 different mounts from SIG Optics for a 30 millimeter tube, and I just grabbed one of them when I mounted this up without actually looking at it. Well, I grabbed my toolkit out at the range, pulled the scope off, and when you roll these guys over, the bottom is etched with what the specs are on it, which thank you very much, SIG, for doing that. But in the future, etch them on the side. Anyway, I pulled it over, looked at the bottom, and found out that I had mounted it up with the 20-minute angle inclined mount. Well, that's a problem because the U300 comes with a 20-minute angle inclined Picatinny rail on top of it. So I started out with a 20 MOA inclined rail, and then I added a 20 MOA inclined mount for 40 minutes of angle of total incline already in the system before I started shooting. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. On our Ultimatum Deadline project, we have a 20-minute angle rail on top of that receiver, and we have a 20-minute angle Night Force mount on top of that, and we are using an Attacker F1 5-25. So that gives me 40 minutes of angle of incline on a scope that is designed to be a long-range shooting scope with a ton of internal adjustment so that you can dial for long range. Well, since we have a ton of internal adjustment, that allows me to get a 100-yard zero, and then I get all of that 40 minutes of angle of extra adjustment back when I try to go to longer engagement distances. This is not the case with this scope. While yes, I get a greater incline that would be more usable at longer ranges, this scope is designed to utilize holdovers, not to dial. So I need to get a 100-yard zero so that I can start out at that 100 and hold over for everything going further out. The scope isn't designed to hold under for closer ranges than your zero. So in this instance, it bit us in the butt. When I tried to actually zero it out, I got to 22.75 minutes of angle and it stopped. So I cannot dial under the factory zero more than 22.75, and I would have had to go to about 26 to get my zero for 100 yards with this setup. So the simple solution is to come back, swap over to a 0-minute angle mount, and we will be just fine because I didn't need that much to go back. So actually swapping over to the 20-minute angle mount, I will only have to come down 6.75, and coming down actually is great because that will give me more, again, 6.75 more from the scope's mechanical center for longer range shooting. So everything is good to go there. And again, if you put this scope on a standard 20 MOA base, you'll probably be pretty close to in there on your mechanical zero. So the whole screw up was obviously my screw up, but it gives me a good example to bring to you guys on when incline is too much incline and when incline can actually help you out greatly. So on long range rifles like the Ultimatum Deadline with that 6.5 Creedmoor round, that will give me the ability to really reach out with that system. With a 17-inch 308, I don't need the ability to reach out that far. And with this scope, it works against me anyway because I can't get the zero that I need to work with the ballistic system in this instance. So going forward, we will swap out. We'll get the 0 MOA mount on here. We will get this system zeroed and then come back and give you a report on how well the BDX system works in the Sierra 3 rifle scope, which I'm really excited to see. So I hope this video isn't too long-winded or too technical for you guys, but if you have any questions over anything that we've just covered, please leave them in the comments section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, get out and shoot.